Hello. Hello, I'm Pete Wedderburn, Pete the Vet, and I've just finished the weekly vet spot on the Pat Kenny Show. So, as always, I'm going to answer the rest of the questions that we didn't get a chance to get to on air. And at the same time, if you've got any more questions about your pets, just type them into the comment section below, and I'll get to those if I can before we're finished. So, I'm going to talk on this Facebook Live session for around 15, 20 minutes, something like that. Okay, now.
Okay, so my dog has cancer and has stopped eating. Is there a supplement I can give her over her last few weeks?
I'm sorry to hear that. It's very difficult. Well, look, I think it's important to talk to your vet about palliative care. Palliative care is something which is relatively new in the veterinary world. In the States now, they've even got hospices for dogs. So it's an area which we're gradually developing and catching up, I suppose, with humans. And So, first of all, there are, depending on what sort of cancer your dog has, there are a number of different types of medications that can be given that would have anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving and appetite-boosting effects. So it's certainly worth discussing those with the vet who knows all about your dog's cancer. When it comes to specific, I suppose, general things that can be given to animals to boost their appetite, I don't. The only thing I would say is offer food that you know your dog really loves. So most dogs have got particular treats that they enjoy more than anything else, whether it's bits of cooked chicken, whether it's fresh meat, whatever. And I would put all of your previous ideas of making sure they don't get too fat by not giving them too much food to one side. This is the time to let your dog have exactly what they want and let them enjoy themselves. But the first thing is talking to your vet about palliative care, and that's what you should do.
Okay, so a little hole has broke out underneath the chest bone 2 years ago of their Cavalier King Charles. So he had 3 operations and went on antibiotics. They dress it every day, and the dog is in great form, eating and running around. Do you think the dog will be okay?
This sounds a bit peculiar. So there's a little hole that's still there after 2 or 3 years. Well, that's not right. There's a reason for that. So the answer really is you should try to find out the reason for that. And I'm sure your vet's already done this quite a lot. I mean, that's what we do when we get these cases. We try and find out what the cause is. And I remember similar cases I've had, and one in particular. Eventually, what happened was the dog had an MRI scan, and on the MRI scan, they identified a tiny, tiny splinter of wood that had somehow got under the skin and worked its way in deep. And what happened was the dog got temporarily better on antibiotics and then got worse again as soon as he stopped the antibiotics. And the reason was the little splinter was acting as a foreign body that was causing a constant slight irritation and was a repeated source of infection. So with that one, because of the MRI scan, we're able to say that's the splinter, that's where it is. We're able to go after it and dissect it out and remove it, and the dog was cured. So, I'm not sure if that's similar to your case at all, but it is worth going back to your vet and saying, well, listen, what do you think the cause of this is, and what else can we do to find out? But I'd warn you that the process of finding out is very expensive. Like having an MRI scan done and the surgery to remove a foreign body, you're talking about a couple of grand at least. So, it's a big and complex thing to try to achieve. But certainly, I think that's a conversation you should be having with your vet.
Okay, so we have a 7-month-old puppy who is a lab cross terrier, which they got from Dogs Trust when he was 2 years old. So he has been mouthing when getting his adult teeth. We managed to get him out of the habit, but he's biting again now. Even though all of his teeth have come down, we just can't seem to stop him. Any help would be appreciated.
Okay, well, I think it's a normal, natural process for dogs to use their mouths to explore the world, especially adolescent dogs. And what we have to do as owners is teach them that it's not okay to use their mouths to explore humans. And what that means is you should find ways to let him use his mouth. For example, Kong chews or canine connectable chews. What I mean by that is chew toys that have got food included in them, and the dog has to chew the toys to get the food out. And if you give your dog lots of those kind of chews, and then basically teach them that he never mouths or bites humans, then he should gradually learn to make that association. You can also use other toys like tug of war toys, these rope toys, and In the past, some people have said you shouldn't use those, but I actually think that new evidence suggests that they are fine to use. And again, your dog can chew on those rather than human hands. And what your dog needs to learn is just that it's never allowed with humans. The best way to learn that is to, every time he does that, just completely ignore him and move away and stop engaging. And if you do that, he'll gradually learn it's no fun to do that to humans, and I'll go and bite these toys instead. But I would also say to you that this kind of topic can be really complex. Sometimes there's more stuff going on under the surface than you realise. And so I'd always say a situation like that is potentially dangerous, and so you should really be talking to a good behaviourist, and that means having a consultation with a behaviourist, somebody who's got good qualifications, good experience and a good reputation, and then talking to them and let them find out more about this mouthing, and they'll then give you good advice. In fact, now that I think of it, if you got the dog from Dogs Trust have a behaviourist whose job is to help people who are having any behavioural issues with the dogs that they've got from Dogs Trust. So the obvious thing for you to do is to go back to Dogs Trust, explain that you're having this issue, and they'll help you sort it out.
Okay, so this comes in from Catherine. So my lab has 2 big lumps, one on his chest and another on his shoulder. They are not cancer, but is it a good idea to remove them? The dog's 10 years old.
I'm not sure. I wonder how you know it's not cancer. Did the vet take a biopsy of them, perhaps? If they have come back as being benign, then often it is okay just to leave them, because benign lumps can sit there without causing any harm for many, many years. But the one thing I would say is if a benign lump is growing, even though it's benign, it can sometimes get so big that it's causing problems because of its sheer size. I think in particular of a dog I'm treating just now that's got a big lipoma, a benign fatty lump, inside its arm here. And at first it just sat there, kind of the size of a walnut, and it wasn't causing any harm. But it's got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's the size of a grapefruit, and it's kind of pushing out the dog's front leg a little bit. So that benign lump, even though it's completely harmless and benign, we are going to remove it because it's causing a problem. So the answer to your question is it depends where the lumps are and how big they are, and how much of an impediment they're causing to your dog's daily life.
Okay, so this comes in from Ruth. So I think she's wondering if she should get a guinea pig pet. So her question is, can guinea pigs get on with dogs? My dog is a lurcher.
Well, it depends on the lurcher, really, because there are some lurchers that have perhaps a history of being used for hunting, and if they have been, then they are not going to take well to having a little furry prey close to them, and they're going to do their best to get at that poor little creature and kill them, because that's what they've done in the past. If, on the other hand, the dog has never seen a small creature like that, it's quite possible you could train it to accept such a thing. I would say they're not a natural mix, and generally I would want to be getting a dog used to creatures like guinea pigs from when they're puppies, so they know about them as they grow older, and that's more likely to be successful.
Okay, just an FYI, Catherine, the lady with the lump question, said that the doctor did say it wasn't cancer, but she's not happy with his results. So,
well, I mean, I'd actually ask the vet for a printout of the results so you can see exactly for yourself what the response was, because you see, when a vet takes a sample from an animal, they send it to the lab, and the lab sends back a report, and the report says in black and white typed text, this is what the diagnosis is. So that's, vets will generally share that with you and explain why then they recommend a particular course of action. I always think that sometimes veterinary and medical terminology can be dressed up to make it sound more complicated than it really is. It's not complicated at all. It's very much black and white. They're simple facts which should be shared with people, and there shouldn't be questions left like you seem to be having yourself just now.
Okay, so this comes in from Paddy. So my Jack Russell gets really nervous anytime I drive. He starts shaking a lot until he gets out. Any advice on stopping this?
Wonder why he does that. I guess I generally say that the best thing is, first of all, to stop driving in places where he gets so upset. Try and go for shorter journeys so that he's not so likely to get upset. Secondly, I'd be saying try and change things around a bit so that his environment in the car changes, so that whatever it is is happening just now is obviously upsetting him. So, for example, if he's traveling in the boot and he can't see out, you might get things set up so he actually can see out in some way. Or alternatively, if he's traveling in the back of a car and he can see out, you might put paper over the windows or something so he can't see out anymore. These kind of things change things a bit. But I think it's normal for some dogs to get a bit excited during travel, and in some cases what vets would do is they'd even suggest giving anti-anxiety medication to dogs to help them with such situations, to help them get used to it. Depends how much your problem it is, though. How much are you just worrying about him looking a bit agitated, and how much is it really causing a problem? I'm not sure.
Okay, so this is the last question. It comes in from Eileen. So a little bunny rabbit has appeared in their garden over the last week. We've left out a carrot and greens for the rabbit to feed on, but they are still there. What should we feed it?
So I presume this is a wild rabbit. If it is, then what you're feeding out, what you're leaving out is fine. But if you want to do things properly, what you should do is go and get some rabbit pellets. You buy these in a pet shop. It's a well-known brand called Burgess, and they're a bit like compressed grass made into pellety stuff. And rabbits enjoy eating them, and they're good for them too. So you might want to do that. I kind of wonder where you're going with a wild rabbit in your back garden, feeding it, but why not? People do the same with little foxes and little badgers, so why not little rabbits? Okay, thanks guys. I'll see you all again next week.